Hello and welcome to Brighter Shores, a new game on Steam developed by a small team of familiar faces to anyone who has played RuneScape. I want to go over the game, what it is, why I think RuneScape players, or anyone honestly, should give it a go, and things I like and dislike about the game so far, so that way you know if it's worth your time or not. Brighter Shores, at a high level, is a point-and-click medieval RPG game, in that aspect very similar to RuneScape. It is also created in a large part by the same creators of RuneScape, with the three Gower brothers being Ian, Paul, and most notably, Andrew. It is a game where you can train various professions, which are similar to RuneScape skills, run around the new world with its unique map layout, and interact with other online players. These professions are things like fishing and cooking, which might be familiar territory, but also completely unique professions like detective, which you can go around tracking down thieves or breaking down doors and arresting a bunch of criminals. It is a free-to-play game with a membership option of $6 a month. Free-to-play allows you to do the first 2 episodes, which is quite a bit of content by itself, and then Premiere allows you to do everything else, which is currently 4 episodes, with the 5th in the works. It has been in development for a few years now, starting back even in 2016, and was released last week in early access. In that time, I have played over 50 hours, and this is what I've learned. First off, why do I think RuneScape players should give it a go? I think most RuneScape players or RuneScape enjoyers should feel morally obligated, as Andrew Gower and his brother Paul are the founding fathers of RuneScape, which probably has an impact on every single one of your guys' lives. We don't know what this game will look like in a year from now, but right now could be the only way to enjoy the game with the player base it has right now. Yes, I'm doing a little bit of FOMO here, but because I think part of it is really true. The start of an MMO where everyone is learning and kind of clueless is something you could just not ever reproduce. Now, if that part doesn't get you slightly interested into it, I'm actually going to express why I really enjoyed Brighter Shores. At the start, it gave me a very nostalgic feeling of how RuneScape first was, that sense of exploring everything, trying to figure out everything out, actually having to read to solve quests was really enjoyable. But again, everyone being clueless, you're helping each other or getting help from others. I was messaging new friends that I made inside the game, or getting messaged by those friends to help them with various things. It was just a great experience in general to do with others that you knew in RuneScape, that maybe you just make an event out of it and do some Brighter Shores together, or make new friends within the game, which is very possible. I made several, and it was just a good experience. There was a natural community that kind of got built, but also you'd have those old feelings where you would just be fishing and someone would ask what everyone's levels were, and everyone would say their levels, and then everyone would just say nice. It was just very nostalgic, and I don't know how else to describe it. It just felt great. The progression does feel nice in the sense that there is always something to unlock and work towards, but sometimes it doesn't respect your time as much, which I'll get to later. The visual clarity of this game is good, and I generally love the art style of the game. Sound effects and music are nice, very well done. Interacting with the world feels rewarding to the ears, and I think it's just great. And I can't believe I have to say this, but a lot of new games just have issues with you even being able to play the game. I had 0 issues at all getting up and play the game. I could just play it. There's no lag, no server issues, and I think that's fantastic. But again, to touch on a lot of the similarities to RuneScape, which is why I probably enjoyed it more than maybe someone who hasn't played RuneScape before, the similarities to RuneScape are definitely there. The skill system is very comparable. Something that I kind of enjoyed was the feeling of being an Iron Man and having to get all your own gear and items to progress is just amazing in this game. Running around the world, examining random objects and reading dialogue, and the way you interact with the world is the exact same as RuneScape, and also has the same humor as RuneScape, which is actually like a really refreshing feeling, just knowing, yeah, this is definitely made by the Gower brothers. It does also have this class system once you get to the second episode. It doesn't seem as impactful, but it's something I haven't seen quite like in any other game, specifically like after you've already started the game. But you have 3 different classes you can pick. The first one's going to be kind of like a guardian, and then you have a Cryo Knight, I think I'm saying that correctly, and then a Hammer Mage. I went with a Hammer Mage because it just sounds funnier to me. That's what I went with. But they all have like weaknesses and strengths, but I don't think they're well implemented in the game yet, and I'll kind of touch on that later. Another thing that this game has that I've never seen before without maybe like a mobile game like a Melvor Idol or some idle-ish game is AFK experience. When I say AFK experience, I mean like full on, you log out of the game and you log back in again and you get a bunch of XP. It does have this. It's not overpowered or anything like that, but it is something that really just allows you to progress the game without actually playing the game. Another thing that is pretty unique is things level up with you as you progress. So you see this guard here, it has a level 0 variant and a level 18 variant. This happens for everything that you can skill, gather, fish, things like that. That's pretty unique. So it just allows them to reuse the same area and asset for the whole duration. I haven't had a problem with this yet. I do see this maybe being an issue if you're stuck in the same episodes for a very, very long time, which you probably will be. But in my 50 hours, I never found this being an issue. But I also saw this as being pretty unique. I haven't seen it done like this, and it's kind of neat, where you just go fishing and the fish level up at certain breakpoints. But if you also need the lower tier 1, you just change it and you can get the lower tier 1. Another thing that this game does that's pretty unique is these sharded instances. So these like puzzle pieces that kind of chunk off the world. Each one of these is a sharded instance. What that means is each one of these areas can only have a set amount of people, and then once that limit is bypassed, then you have like a kind of another instance created. But I think that's pretty unique. I know RuneScape 3 at one point was considering doing something like this for like the Grand Exchange. But it's cool to actually see it implemented in general, because I kind of like it. I'm a big fan of it. Because what it does is it prevents having like servers with like 0 people at all, which always doesn't feel the greatest. And as long as the maximum is a healthy limit, I think it's good. But I really do like this sharded system. Pretty cool. Some people don't like it because it maybe doesn't make the world feel as like immersive or big, but I'm a pretty big fan of it. And lastly, we do have to talk about maybe the things that could be improved or better. Note that this game is in very early development, and we know things will change, and honestly, it can only get better from here. Something that I know is changing, and that's going to be combat. We're going to have more things added to it. So we're going to have special attacks being an option, and bosses being introduced, which neither of those things are really in the game yet. We're also going to have the episode 5 come out, which is going to flesh out a lot of content. Other than that, I had a whole list of other things that we knew were going to get changed, and they've already been done. So I do really want to speak to like how fast these like changes are coming into the game, like instantly based on feedback is what it feels like, where if the large base of the community feels a certain way, the day after it's resolved and fixed, which is amazing on their side. Now, that definitely does not mean there's not more changes that need to be done. The first thing I noticed when I played the game was health potions and potions in general. They all feel terrible and sometimes just completely useless. The very first example of this was you make a potion early on that restores 10% of your hit points. Sounds great, but then you use it in combat and it takes so long for you to like heal from it that your enemy's hitting you 2 to 3 times and you're there just stalling your own attack while you're chugging a potion, resulting in net loss in health almost every single time. It's not as bad with higher tiers, but like it still feels terrible. And all the other potions, and why this is an issue is because potions could be aligned with some sort of skill, I guess, in preparation, but there's other potions that are supposed to boost your strength. They do nothing in my test, or extremely unnoticeable. And I feel like the description for them is certainly misleading, so that's a big issue. And then the last ones, the ones that don't even have to do with combat. Let's talk about the XP ones specifically. They take a while to make and get all the resources for, and then they only last for 2 minutes. 2 minutes is such a terrible increment of time. It is not even enough time to make 12 potions in itself, and it's actually an XP loss overall because it takes so long to get the potion, drink it, make sure you're upkeeping it. It's just a whole lot of steps, and it's also reducing your inventory space, which then instantly hurts a lot of skills specifically. So to me, that needs to be changed. If it was 6 minutes, it'd be better. I think it should be 20 minutes personally, because then people would honestly use it just about everywhere. And then another thing is random idle times, or just things not spawning fast enough. This felt terrible. Fishing is probably the biggest contender of this. I'd say fishing, and then cutting wood, and then some of the gathering skills feel terrible. Honestly, all the gathering skills feel terrible sometimes. And then combat even. You could be running out of goblins to fight. So they need to increase respawn rates, in my opinion, so you can be more actively playing and not just sitting there waiting for something to spawn. That felt terrible. And then there's also like little to no skill expression in combat right now. You can't do things like kite things out with range because you're slowed by like 80% every single time you try and walk in combat. It feels terrible. I do think this might be added slightly with maybe special attacks and such, but right now it's just, if I'm fine with like the AFK style being available, but we also need to have the ability to be able to do more inputs for more experience and more just fun. Another thing a lot of people had issues with when going from episode 1 to 2 was the fact that this guard skill and none of the items you wore from episode 1 carry over in any noticeable capacity into the second skill, which is Scout. And I feel like this is very easy to address, and they do seem to be acknowledging that there's some way to implement this to where it feels a little bit better. Example of this could be that guard is the only way to increase your hit points. So when you're 20 guard here, that when you go over here, you carry over all your hit points XP and the benefits of that hit points level into the next region, but the gear and stuff has to change. I think that's fair, and you could do this with every single one. Like Scout could give you an increased critical strike chance, or some mechanic like that that could carry over into every single one. One that I've seen for Scout specifically that I think would be a really nice touch is it permanently buffs your range attacks by a small amount based on your Scout level, and then that carries over to both the other regions. I think that's something that they really need to do, because right now it does feel really bad the first time you go from episode 1 to 2. I'm actually a huge fan of kind of re-gearing and resetting your gear side of things, because that part's fun to me. But yeah, it doesn't really feel good on the skill side, because you can go to the next region and you just get slapped. And I think just a small buff based on how much you've trained another skill, I think would go a long way. I kind of touched on this earlier as well. The class you have doesn't seem to make that big of an impact right now, and there's not a whole lot of difference between them. You do get different weaknesses and different strengths, but it's not extremely noticeable, except when you just start getting slapped by something that you have zero resistance against. That's really noticeable. But I think we need more like when special attacks are added, I'm hoping that each one of these factions has its own special attack, and as well as that we have more uniqueness in combat, like different animation styles, cooler armor and abilities is my guess the long-term goal, but right now there's just nothing. Another thing that feels really bad at certain points is the leveling curve. I think the early like 1 to 20 feel great. The one that feels terrible, like extra terrible right now is level 20 on, specifically like 20 to 25 feel terrible. Anyone that's gone through level 20 to 21 knows just how bad that grind feels. And the why it feels so bad is you're going from gaining or only needing 3000 XP for a level to now requiring 17,000 XP per level. For like this example, this is literally like almost half of the total XP you've gained from going from level 0 to 20, you now have to gain for a single level. And that just feels terrible. I kind of understand the reason for it, but it feels really bad, and I'm not a huge fan of it. But one of the last things I want to talk to you is I wish there's more teleports. It kind of gets solved the farther you go on, but like for the second episode there's actually another teleport, but you just can't unlock it without having really high requirements. And then the third region I think's really handled well, and same with the fourth region. So the fourth region has this teleport way over here, and then this teleport over here, and then the third region has two teleports. One is over here, which takes to the main area, and then there is another one way over here. I think those are fine, but I definitely think there is a need for more teleports. Honestly, like the first region feels specifically noticeable, where you just have to run from the base area to all of these points, and I think there's a big room for improvement on just maybe one or two more teleports. Maybe just add the ability to teleport to obelisks, and I think that'd be okay. But like the first area, I think there should be some better way of transporting around. I'm fine if there's an unlock behind it, but right now there's just nothing. This game also has some co-op or like social interactions with each other, but I think there's room for more. The way I've seen it in game right now is there's a few skilling activities that you can do with another person, and it is more efficient to do it that way. But I think this could be built out more. I think it's a good step, but I think there's more we could be doing. I think with bosses being introduced, I hope it's just a bunch of people getting thrown in a room and all working together to try and kill a boss. If it is implemented like that, I think I'm gonna be a huge fan of it. But right now, there needs to be more of those social interactions where you're kind of encouraged to do something with another person. And lastly, probably my biggest gripe when I first started was it looked like people that had beta access prior to the release did not get reset. I remember literally in the first 24 hours, there was someone running around with like 400 total level, and I was so confused on how that was possible, and I was so demoralized. It just felt really bad and demotivating to see someone like have that big of an advantage when there is supposedly going to be high scores for this game at some point, and seeing that just, I wasn't a huge fan of it. Like right now, you'll see there's some YouTubers that just did not get reset or anything, and they're just chilling at like almost 800 total. When there's a lot of people that have put a lot of hours in, they're like 500 or so. But to have such a huge advantage on release, I'm not a huge fan of. So my closing thoughts on the game is, will this game replace RuneScape? Not at all. I think the game has a lot of potential, but to say it will replace something like RuneScape is very unlikely. This is a type of game you could easily play alongside RuneScape, or any game to be honest, and we'll get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And I think it has a lot of potential to have fun when new episodes are released and then you leave it, but to me it is a worse version than games that already exist. I do think this game has a lot of potential, and the developers for are very passionate, but to say it's a replacement to any game that exists right now and to validate the time commitment for it, I think is pretty hard. But if you're enjoying it, let me know down below in the comments. I know a lot of people are playing this right now on old school players are playing a lot of this right now until Leagues. When Leagues comes out, I imagine a lot of people just not playing this at all till maybe the next episode. But even then, I think it's going to be rare. But I'm enjoying it. I think everyone should at least play the free-to-play version. And if you enjoy it, play all the episodes and go from there. I think it's worth the money, time investment. I think there's a lot of joy in it. Plus, it supports the OGs. I think that is really important to do as a community. That's everything. Bye.